Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk about installing Linux. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Linux, but I'm going to assume that you're not since you're watching this video. So Linux is another operating system, it's an alternative to Windows or Mac. And not only does Linux run on computers, it also runs on a lot of devices like smartphones, smart TVs, smartwatches, and I even have this little guy here, which is a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi also runs Linux. And they're pretty cool gadgets, and I promise once I get more equipped with recording these videos and better setup, more experience, I promise we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty hardware stuff, but for now I'm going to do all my stuff on virtual machines. But the process on a virtual machine is the same as on the real hardware, so you can just skip the virtual machine segment of this video to the point where we're installing the operating system. Okay, so to get started, we're going to go to the website Parrot Linux. So let me just get that on your screen here so you can see what I see. So here's the link. I'm going to put that in the description as well so you can copy and paste it yourself. So once we go there, it's going to bring you to this page. So the one that I downloaded is called Parrot Security MATE ISO. You can either do direct download, which is standard for most browsers. I happen to have Brave browser, so I can use GetTorrent. If you're using Brave browser, that's the quickest way to download it. So once you click on it, it comes up to this screen here, and then you just click Start Torrent. And as you'll see, it'll download it. And then once this is done, this will go to 100%, and it'll start to say seeding. In case you're not familiar with how torrents work, once it's seeding, then you just have to click this arrow right underneath where it says Save File, and that'll download it straight into your computer. So I already did this process for you, so we already have an ISO. So the next thing we need to do is set up your virtual machine. And like I said before, if you're using real hardware, you can skip this step. But just keep in mind that with the real hardware, it involves wiping out the hard drive. Alright, so I'm going to create a new virtual machine. I'm going to call it Parrot OS. And I don't know if you noticed, but on my main system here, I have Parrot OS installed, which is why I have the Parrot wallpaper. Okay, so this is going to be a Linux operating system, and we're going to run it's basically a Debian or Ubuntu version. I'm just going to click on Ubuntu because there isn't one specific for Parrot OS. Okay, we're going to go to Next. Linux doesn't need much RAM to run. It's not a memory hog like Windows is, but I'm going to let's give it 4 gigs. Okay, create a new hard drive. Alright, VDI, that's fine. Dynamically allocated will give you the drive faster, but it'll be slower performance when you're running your virtual machine. However, fixed size, it'll take longer to format, but it'll run faster once it's ready to go. So, but just for this video, we're going to do dynamically allocated. But it's up to you. You decide what you want to do. Yeah, 10 gigs is fine for Linux. We don't have to make it 50 gigs like we did for Windows. Okay, so now once we have our machine there, we have to go to Settings. Okay, the RAM we did, that's fine. I want to give it 6 cores. Okay, the rest is fine. Alright, that's fine. Alright, the display, they only give you 16 megabytes by default, but I like to bring it all the way up to 128. And monitor count we're going to have on 1. Alright, storage, we got to put a ISO file in the virtual CD drive here. So I'm going to choose a disk file, and this is the Parrot Security 4.1 that we downloaded already. So let's go ahead and open that. Okay. Audio, that's fine. Network is fine. Yeah, all these settings are fine, so we're going to stick with those. Okay, and let's go ahead and boot up our virtual machine. So we're choosing the Parrot Security OS ISO, and we're going to click Start. At this point, this is like the real hardware. So you're going to see live mode. You can actually go into live mode and just take a look at it and see how it functions. Okay, so there we have it. So as you see, it looks very familiar to the same operating system I have on my host operating system. Alright, so to install Parrot OS, we're going to click on this icon that says Install Parrot. That's going to bring you to this screen. Oh wow, I made too small of a hard drive. Let's correct that. Okay. So, I goofed up. Let me go ahead and pause this recording and I'll correct that for you. As soon as I figure out what button pause is, like I said, I'm new to all this stuff. Pause is right. Okay, so I corrected the issue with the small hard drive. When I was installing Parrot, I forgot that it comes pre-installed with a lot of programs and tools which occupy all the space. So anyway, let me get you back on track here where we were before. Alright, so we saw the welcome screen. Okay, our time zone is America, New York, that's fine. Okay, English. So this is where you can select your keyboard layout. We're going to stick with English. Now there's two options here. As you can see, I gave it a 31 gig partition, or 31 gig virtual hard drive. So this option is to fully erase the disk, which will delete everything. And then there's also manual partitioning, but that's more advanced, so I'm going to keep it simple in this video, if you guys are okay with that. Alright, so we can have no swap, we can have swap no hibernate, or swap with hibernate. I'm going to choose swap with no hibernate, and that'll give it a, as you can see in the bottom, it'll have a 3.2 gig swap partition at the end, which is this orange segment here. And then the red one is obviously going to be your root drive, which is the equivalent to a C drive in Microsoft Windows. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and click Next. Once we click Next here, that's the point of no return if you're working on the real machine. It'll erase all the contents of that drive, so make sure you back them up before you get this far in the system. But since we don't have any data here, I'm going to click Next. Okay, so it wants your name. My name is going to be user. Actually, you know what? Let's make it interesting. The All-American Tech Guy. There we go. Might as well make it my own name. So it's going to generate a name here, which is basically your username for Linux, since it won't fit that whole long name. This is your computer name. Password. This is where you type in your password. Mine, for simplicity reasons, is going to be password. If I can type. Okay. So now we just made our root user. Okay, so this is just a summary of what we set up. We're going to click on Install and Install Now. So now at this point it's going to load the operating system onto the onto the virtual hard drive, unless you're working with real hardware. It's going to load it on the physical drive. So Linux generally is pretty quick to install. So we're going to let that run. I'll leave it in real time so you can see how long it takes to install, and I'll put a marker, or I'll put a timestamp in the video where this part of the process ends. So that way, if you don't want to sit here and watch the video, watch the progress bar, you'll see you can skip right to the end. However, if you do want to stay, I'll just explain more things about Linux while it's installing. So the nice thing about Linux is it comes pre-installed with Mozilla Firefox, and it also gives you a Office program which is called LibreOffice. And if you're not familiar with LibreOffice, it's basically very similar to Microsoft Office. It has like a Word, Excel, PowerPoint program, except it's called Writer, Calc, and Impress, because obviously they can't use the same names from Microsoft. So, but the functionality, they're very similar. I mean, if you're an average user, the average user is not going to know much of the difference with it. But if you're like a teacher, or your job specifically requires the use of Microsoft Word, it may be hard to switch. But for somebody like me that types a letter once in a while, it works perfectly fine for me. And another good thing about Linux, there's a lot of free open source software. So you can go and download and most of the free stuff out on there is pretty good. So it does, it's a learning curve. It's like changing from Windows to Apple or vice versa. So you do have to learn a new system, but the nice thing about Linux is it's open source. Also, Linux itself is open source. So if you're concerned about, privacy, like where, Windows 10 calls home, or Apple, Mac OS calls home, and they report like different things that are going on your computer, like what websites are going at, what you're typing on the keyboard. In fact, even in Windows, they have a option that there's a check on or off option, and by default it's checked on, where it says allow us to record what you type on your keyboard so we can see, improve like the Cortana thing, but basically they're recording what you're typing on your keyboard. So if you go to like TD Bank and you type in your username and password, that's getting recorded as long as that check mark is on. But I don't think Microsoft's going to go and use that to go into your bank account, but once it gets in there, it's out there somewhere. But Linux, since it's open source, that means there's multiple groups of people working on it, and they each get to see the code. So if something in there's a little funny, somebody can edit that code out and and get rid of it. But usually, Linux is always like the alternative. So we're about 38% here. Another thing to keep in mind, you see these 3 bars up here? This one's your CPU usage. In this case, this one's 20%. This is your RAM usage, and this is your network usage. So we're not really using the network at the moment. But the reason the RAM, if you notice how the RAM is full, most of it's 40% of it is used by the the programs running in the system, and then the other 68% is basically cache memory. So any files or things that you frequently access on the computer, they store it in cache RAM, so it doesn't have to hit the hard drive every time to load it. And of course, the RAM is a lot faster than the hard drive, because the RAM directly interfaces with your CPU, where the hard drive has to go through the either the PCI Express bus if you're using a Express M.2 drive, or if you're using a SATA M.2 drive or a regular SATA drive, those drives have to go through a SATA controller before they get to the CPU, so that's an extra step in the process. Or if you're using a mechanical drive, it's a tremendous amount slower than if you're using a solid state. So anyway, Linux does that, so don't get worried if your RAM is at 100% usage, because as you open up more programs that require more RAM, it'll clear out the whatever cache is not being used to make room for that program to be open. So at least, since you spend all the money to put the RAM in a computer, at least it goes to use in Linux, where Windows, it kind of just uses whatever program is running. They don't cache anything into the RAM. So, or if they did, they don't show it in their task manager, but Linux shows you everything. So when you do a update in Linux, which I will show you later on in this video, you'll see that you'll see every little intricate detail that's being updated. Where in Windows it just gives you that generic message on your screen. Windows is updating with the spinning circle, and you have no idea what's going on, but Linux doesn't hide anything. So, and I've been using Parrot OS as my main operating system for quite some time now. I used to use, before that I used to use Linux Mint, which is, it's a good transition from Windows 10. And I've also used Ubuntu, which is also pretty good, but Ubuntu I found to be a little bit on the clunky side sometimes, but Linux Mint and Parrot OS are pretty good. If you're a beginner, I would suggest Linux Mint, but you can also try Parrot as well. Okay, so we're at the finish screen here. So we're going to leave that checkbox, and then we're going to click on Done, and then it'll restart your computer. Alright, so it says please remove the media. So it's a virtual drive, so it's already out. But if it's a physical computer, just remove the disk. And then you press enter, and that'll initiate the reboot command. Okay, so this is the boot process. Okay, there's my name. So I'm going to type in my password, my secret password. Okay, so here's the first boot. So once you boot up your system, it'll ask you to update the operating system. I'm not going to do it in this case because it takes a good 20-30 minutes. So I'll show you the beginning of it at the end of the video. So it's going to ask if you want to check for updates, and you would click yes, but for now I'm going to click no. Alright, so here's Mozilla Firefox pre-installed. This is like how Microsoft comes with Internet Explorer or Edge or whatever they want to call it now, and Apple comes with Safari. Okay, so, and they also include Privacy Badger and a bunch of other extensions. And another thing they include as well is Tor browser, except Tor browser doesn't work until the updates are finished in Linux. So I can show you that after I do the updates. So they have some graphic software in here. They have LibreOffice Draw, which is a drawing program. You can also this one's GIMP. I'm sorry, not GIMP. I mean GIMP. So GIMP is like, it's similar to Adobe Photoshop, but it's, it's the open source version. Okay, here's the rest of the LibreOffice programs. So they have LibreOffice Writer, which is like Word. Calc is like Excel, and Impress is like PowerPoint. So if I open up Writer, you'll see that it looks very similar to Microsoft Word. So you can leave that box checked. It'll teach you a little something new every time you open it. I'm going to uncheck it. Okay, so this is all the, basically it's, functionality. You got open, save, save as. In the top you have your font size. You can choose your fonts. And then bold, italic, underline, strike through. Well, anyway, you get the idea. Once you install it, you can go through and play around with it. So I'm going to open up Calc, which is very similar to Excel. And then let me go to Office, and then I'm going to go to Impress, which is very similar to Microsoft PowerPoint. So that you can choose a theme here. And there's actually quite a bit to choose from, and probably a lot of people won't have these themes if you're doing a project for school, because most people will have the Microsoft PowerPoint, and since they don't copy Microsoft, you can you'll have some different themes that you can surprise people with. Okay, and there you go. It's very similar. Okay, so that's the Elf. It does have some games on here. Well, actually it has one game. But there are a lot of games available for Linux as well. They're also making Linux gaming systems. So here's the system tools. And I'm sure many of you are very familiar with Bleachbit. So that's how I remember hearing that in the news all the time when Hillary Clinton deleted all of her emails, her 30,000 emails. She used Bleachbit. So anyway, that comes pre-installed in Parrot OS. And then we have gparted, which is a hard drive partition editor. And the Bleachbit and gparted are more for advanced users, because they can destroy your data. And then we have a disk usage analyzer, which will, if you have hard drives full, you can run that and it'll tell you where all your space is being used up, which is a nice feature. Windows doesn't have that in there by default. And terminal is like the command prompt in Windows. Okay, now the other thing we have here under System, we have a control center, which is equivalent to control panel in Windows. So once you open that up, you can install your printer, users and groups, so you can add more users to the computer if you'd like. Bluetooth devices, you have your display settings, so you can change your resolution. I can make it 1024 by 768, but for this video, I'm going to keep it the same. Keyboard, sound, power management. And the nice thing here is you can change these to never. I usually like to leave them at never, and I just shut the monitor off if I'm not going to use the computer for a while. Or I shut the computer off. Okay, so it has a firewall built in. And also they have appearance, which is you can change your background and change the color scheme, things to that nature. Startup programs, you can disable your startup programs very easily. That's pretty much it. That's actually, if I do the update, actually I'm going to do the update now, because there are some things that are not showing here because I didn't do the update. So I'm going to do the update, and I will pause the video and show you. I'll resume it when it's done. System tools. Where's the updater? Oh, the updater is not here yet because the update updates the puts that icon there. Okay, so to get that message back, I'm just going to restart. So you go to System, Shutdown, and on this screen, if you do nothing, it'll shut down automatically. But in this case, I'm going to click on Restart. And I don't know if you've been around since Windows 95, but sleep used to be called Suspend. And basically, it's the same thing. It's just that Linux retained the word suspend and Microsoft changed it to sleep. So I'm going to click on Restart. And then once it reboots, it'll give us that message to update. I just press enter there to bypass that 3-second counter. Okay. I'm not giving you my password since you already know it. And Linux will ask you every time you boot up if you want to update the computer. And then I'll show you how to disable that if you don't want to update it all the time. In fact, it's actually in the startup programs. Maybe it made a liar out of me. Alright, startup applications. And then you can go ahead, if you don't want it to ask you to update all the time, you can just uncheck this system updater. But anyway, since the command didn't come up, I'm going to copy this command and see if I can trigger it to show up. So I'll teach you a little terminal stuff. Okay, that did not work. So I'm going to show you how to update Linux through the command line now. So you're going to type in sudo, which is basically equivalent to Windows when you right click an icon and you hit run as admin. Sudo basically means super user do, and it runs it as the root user, which is equivalent to administrator in Windows. So apt update password. Okay, so it wants my password, which is password. Okay, so now it's going to do a it's going to update the repositories. Sudo apt upgrade. That'll upgrade all the programs and stuff. This is the part that takes a long time. And after this one, we'll have to do a full update. So if the automatic pop-up doesn't come up and ask you if you want to update, then you can update it through the command line. And as you can see, we're seeing everything that's getting updated in real time. And we know what website it's coming from. We know how big each file size is. We get a percentage, as you see on the bottom there. So I'm going to let this roll. So I'm going to pause the video, and then once this is done, I will come back. Okay, so in the manual update, you'll get stuck on this screen where you have just a colon and it has a command. I just hold down the enter button and it says press Q to quit. So now I'm going to press Q to quit. Now it's going to resume the update, and I will pause this video and I will come back when it's done. Oh wait, here we got another message. Alright, so we're going to stick with the same keyboard layout, English. And should non-super users be able to capture packets? I'm going to hit yes for this. There is a packet capture tool in this operating system, and it's installed by default. But that's outside of the scope of this video. But you can play around with it. Okay, I will be back when this update is done. So just to give you an idea how long this is taking, it's 9:45 right now, and we're only 27% done with the updates. So it takes a while. So this is something where you want to let it go and then come back, go get something to eat, take your wife or your girlfriend out to dinner, come back. By that time it'll be waiting for you. So now, so we're at 28% now. Next investment, I think I should get an adjustable arm for the microphone, so I can sit up like a human being and talk to you like this, as opposed to talking into the microphone like this. So that's my next investment in this project. Alright, so I'm gonna pause the video and I will be back. So we're coming down the home stretch here. So we're at 92%, and it's almost 10 o'clock on the eve of Halloween here. So we're nearing the end of the updates. So I don't know what the kids are going to do this Halloween. I mean, they may not want to wear masks since they have to wear masks when they go to school. So, but I'm sure the Halloween masks are much more fun. So we're almost at 95. It was moving along. 97, 98. Anyway, you get the picture here. Oh, I got a connection established. And I got a Brave advertisement. And the nice thing with Linux, actually this is the reason I switched to Linux. I have a choice. I can either do the updates when I want, or I can not do them. With Windows, practically every time you shut down your computer or turn it on, you have to do Windows updates, which is the main reason I did away with Microsoft and hopped over to Linux right when Windows 10 came out, and I had to turn the computer on, even though I have an i7 with a solid state drive and 32 gigs of RAM at that time. I had to wait 30 minutes to an hour for Windows updates to finish so I can use my computer. I mean, my 286 computer turned on quicker than that with Microsoft DOS at the time. So I couldn't tolerate it anymore, so I switched over to Linux and I haven't looked back. Okay, so now we got to a command prompt here. So this means that the updates are done. And there is one other trick I want to show you. If you press the up arrow, it'll populate your previous commands that you ran. So if you wanted to run them again, you just press up a couple times and press enter. The only one I didn't show you yet is this one, which is called full upgrade. So what full upgrade is it updates the operating system files as well. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And because it's a update, it requires a password. It's a shame Microsoft updates don't require passwords. So actually, there's nothing more to update. So we're done. So it's 10:01 now. I wish I recalled what time I started the updates. so we had an idea. And we're dealing with gigabit internet here. We have i7, 16 gigs, PCI Express, M.2 solid state drive. So we're dealing with some pretty decent hardware. Maybe not the greatest, but it's certainly not the least. So after we did the update, we now have this login window here. And this is a nice feature, especially if you're the only one using your computer. If you click on login window, it's going to ask for the admin password, which is password in my case. Okay, you can change your background. And this is the background of the login screen, so you can change it to any one you want. I personally like that one. And my OK button is off the screen. Probably because I'm in 800 by 600. Anyway, enter button works just as good. And here's another thing. If you want your user to log in, you can just type in your username here. And the username in this case is this one. So you can copy it from the command prompt if you want. Or if you know it, you can just type it in. But it's not the all-American tech guy. This is the abbreviated username that was automatically generated. So if I put the username in here, this is the automatic login, so when I boot up the computer, it won't ask me for a password. But if I go to run a update or install a program or anything that requires administrator approval, it will ask me for the password. So you still get the security, it's just that it'll go into the desktop immediately. Go into desktop immediately without requiring a password. So that's what that will do. So once you put that in there, we can close this out. So this wasn't here before I ran the updates, so this is what was included in the updates. Okay, what else was here that's not here, or that wasn't here before? Keyboard shortcuts, I don't believe that was there before. Although it may have been. Anyway. Where's that update? Oh, here it is, check for updates. So now the check for updates icon is there, so you can click on that and do it through the GUI as opposed to the command line. But it's the same thing, it's just a different way to access it. So anyway, as a bonus here, I'm going to show you how to use Bleachbit. I don't know if you ever used a crap cleaner before, or a CCleaner for Windows, but it's equivalent to crap cleaner. So while we were doing the updates before, I pulled up Bleachbit's website, and they have a shop. You can actually buy a cloth if you wanted to wipe your server with a cloth, or you have the BlackBerry edition, which is the Bleachbit hammer. Not in any way affiliated with Bleachbit. I just thought that was cool that they put that on their website. It depends how you look at it. One way it might be comical, and the other way maybe you don't like it, but anyway, it's there. So let's take a look at Bleachbit. So there's two versions. There's Bleachbit as a user, and there's Bleachbit as root. Another word for root is administrator for the Windows users. So I'm going to run the regular user Bleachbit, and then they have you can set these up, check for software updates. See, everything, you get a choice. Exit after cleaning, confirm before delete. You can set it to whatever you want. You can have custom folders to delete. So if you have, I don't know, should I do another 30,000 email joke? Sure, why not? You can add a folder with all your 30,000 email folder and it'll delete it for you. But I'm not going to do that. It'll delete your cache. And then you have a whitelist if you have a folder or file you want to prevent from getting deleted. Of course, you can put it in the whitelist, which eventually is going to be renamed to allow list, because they want to do away with whitelist and blacklist in the computer language. So they're going to have an allow list and a block list. Alright, so I usually check all the APT. Bash history. What bash history is when you press the F button on your keyboard here, the previous commands that you ran. Alright, deep scan deletes like all the temporary files, and yeah, I'll run that too. Some of the ones that take a long time, they'll give you a little warning message. Alright, Firefox, it can clear out your Firefox cookies, passwords. Yes, I want to delete my Firefox passwords. But mainly it's kind of like a crap cleaner. They do the same thing. You can you can wipe the free disk space, which basically means the unused space on your computer. You can it'll write zeros to it and just overwrite any deleted data that could still be remnants in the free space. Because when you put your file in a trash bin, you empty the trash bin, it just deletes it out of the index of the drive. It doesn't delete the data file because that takes a long time. So I'm not going to check that one, but you can if you want. Once you check it and run it, it's beyond recovery. Alright, so this is another one. Configure options and preferences. I didn't configure those options yet. Okay, memory is experimental. I'm not going to play around with that. Yeah, everything. So I have everything checked except for these three items: free disk space, localization, and memory. If you want to check free disk space, that's up to you. But these two I'm going to leave unchecked because they're experimental. Alright, so if you hit preview, it'll generate a list of files that can be deleted. So it's only going to free up 103 megabytes. Since this is a clean install, there's not really much on there. And to clean it, you just click clean. And then it'll ask you want to permanently delete. Are you sure? Yes. So I'm going to delete it. So it's going to run through. And it says deleted 230 files. So we got 40 megabytes. Wow, that was the size of the first hard drive that I had on my very first computer, a 40 megabyte hard drive. Can you believe that? So 286 processor, and it had like 256 kilobytes of RAM. Not gigabytes, not megabytes, kilobytes. So that's how far I go back in the computer industry. And I'll show you the root one. So root one obviously requires a password. The concept's the same, but except it runs it on an administrator level as opposed to a user level. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that I showed you. Okay. So free disk space, localization, and memory, I'm going to leave those unchecked. Everything else is going to be checked, so I'll do preview. And if you notice, the first time I ran it, it wouldn't delete certain files. That was because that was on the user level. This is on the admin level, so it should clear out everything. But all in all, it's just like Crap Cleaner. That was my favorite program when I ran Windows. Alright, so we got another 137 megabytes. Alright, so that's it for Crap Cleaner. And there's one other tool I wanted to show you guys too. And I can't recall what it was. Oh, okay, it's not necessarily a tool, but this is rather interesting. Alright, so in the terminal, I'm going to type in sudo nano /etc/fstab. So what this is file system tab. So it's going to list all the file systems on the operating system. Nano is basically a text editor. It's kind of like edit way back in the days of MS-DOS, where you type in edit and then a file name. It's equivalent. It's very similar. Alright, so I'm going to run that command, and because it requires sudo, it needs a password. Okay, so what this is this is your hard drive ID. So the root partition has a subvolume. Let me just have to use the keyboard arrows. So the file system is btrfs. Linux usually runs on ext4, but Parrot particularly use btrfs. So it has a subvolume. And another thing you can do too is you can put in you can add a temp file system, which basically is a file system not on a physical hard drive but in the system RAM. Sometimes Parrot OS does it by default, but because we're doing it in a virtual machine, they don't make a temporary file system because the virtual machine RAM is shared with the system. But it's nice because when you reboot your computer, your temp file is clean, and then you have a clean temp file to, on the next boot, you don't have to run like Crap Cleaner or anything to clear your temp file. But because the virtual machine is not set up that way. So I will make a video explaining how to set up a temporary file system, but that's outside the scope of this video. I already went overboard by showing you this screen here, and also showing you how to use the program Bleachbit. So that was just a little bonus that I put in the video. Alright, so I'm going to do, at the bottom here it says the up bracket means Control X. If I press Control X, it'll allow me to exit. It'll ask me if I want to save it. I'm going to press no. And my advice to you, if you don't know what you're doing in that file, don't do anything, because you could cause your computer not to boot after all the work that you did. So that's a discussion for another video. Okay, so we're all good here. If you have any questions about this video, or you want me to show you some more things, feel free to comment, like, subscribe. I'm not going to beg you for money, but you'll see in the video I have links for that. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching, and you have a good rest of your day. If you're celebrating Halloween tomorrow, have a happy Halloween.